Hello everyone and welcome back to another manga review. I am the Rat and this is The Rat's Nest. Today we have a volume that I was very excited to get into and certainly lived up to the expectations. So as you know, I've been doing Berserk on this series, specifically been reading through the deluxe volumes. I've already read the first two. I read volume 7 and 8, and after volume 8, I loved the ending of volume 8. We're now on to volume 9, and I was hyped for this, right? I honestly was really hyped for it, and it lived up to it. So let's just get right into it. It starts off with Nuts, and he's kind of being what's the word I wrote here? Introspective, as to why did he really leave the Band of the Hawk? He's alone in the forest. He's like, this is weird and it's odd. And why did he set out in the first place to chase some vague dream if he already had what was good there? The question of what would have happened had Nuts not left the Hawks is a very interesting one, and one that I think I'm going to have to read more of the series before I can really answer. But it's a good question that is kind of brought up here. And he's also wondering, like, was this the right idea? Like, was it right to leave the Hawks and stuff? And I like I said, I think this is all great questions to ask. Because it's like, did he make the right decision? It was, to say impulse if he'd been planning this for a while, but it was vague. And while I certainly agree that he needs to find something, it's very cool to get to see him question this, to, just add some more depth to his character and whatnot. And it'll be very, very interesting to see, later on in the series, like, to maybe get more of an idea of what would have happened if he hadn't, because ultimately that comes down to Griffith's character and what has been Griffith's plan throughout all of this so far. We also have, near the end of this section, a skeleton knight comes up to Guts, and it's someone that he very clearly can't beat in a fight, so someone insanely strong, talking about a lot of stuff. I can't remember if he name-dropped the Eclipse specifically. I know of the Eclipse. I can't say I know what the Eclipse is, but I do know of it. And so it's interesting that this guy probably has some ties to a demon. I don't know who he is. I assume we'll learn later. But it was a cool scene, and as always, the art is on point, but especially the art was on point here. Next, we have a very interesting, and what I'm guessing is a very pivotal section of Berserk. Here in my notes, my trusty notes page, I said G-Man and Princess Kiss, I think is what I wrote there. It looks like a K anyways. And yeah, so we have G-Man, Mr. Griffith himself, coming in through the window and meeting with the princess. And it's, man, what a scene. I always enjoy getting to see Griffith and his thought processes, but we got some tidbits about Griffith here, man. Now here, let me just read down my notes for this section. I have G-Man, smooth AF, not gonna lie. So he's a pedo. And then obviously not romantic for G-Man. Does he miss Nuts? So, I didn't know how old the princess was whenever I was reading through this originally. And we learn later she's 17 in the book, right? I thought she was younger. And, 17 is still, but it's not as egregious as, like, I don't know how old Griffith is at this part of the story. But it's not as egregious as I thought it was, at like 12 or something. It's very interesting, as we've known, right? I can't remember who brought it up, whether it was Judo or Casca. I think it was Judo, I think that's his name if I remember correctly. That Griffith was going to go for the princess, right? And that's because, he wants a kingdom, he wants to be king. So obviously the path through that is through the princess, and she obviously likes him. So that part wasn't surprising. The fact that he met up with her, that's not surprising at all. It was just so interesting to kind of see. It was obviously all a play for Griffith. He didn't mean anything that he did, right? So like that's what obviously not romantic for G-Man. Like during the scene, you can see like in his face, like it's not romantic for him. It's an obvious contrast with the princesses, and I think that that's very intentional to show us that there's two very different emotions going on there between the two of them. And it's so interesting to see Griffith's character like this, because he's doing something that he obviously knows he's going to get, imprisoned for, right? So why? There's much better ways to go about getting with the princess, right? There's much better ways to do. So why did he choose this? That brings in the interesting last point of, does he miss Nuts? At the end, we see there, I think that's a wound that he received from Nuts at the end of last volume, and he like holds it and is like crying, like curled up. So does he miss Nuts, or and like is this just like a rebound, or like what? Basically, it's super interesting. Personally, do I think that Nuts leaving had an effect on Griffith to make him do that? It's said later that at least Judo, I think that's his name, thinks that that's the case, that Guts leaving had that effect on Griffith. I don't know. Maybe. Was it Guts leaving or was it him losing? That's the question. I don't know where Griffith's mental state is now. I don't know if he's genuinely a good guy or if he's, not a good guy. And this is something I forgot until we saw it later, is Griffith having the Behelit. I think that's how you pronounce it. Is Griffith having that, like, definitely goes to, like, more towards the bad side. I don't know. It's something we're going to have to, it's just something we're going to have to see. And that's part of what makes Berserk so interesting. Is, what exactly is Griffith thinking at any point in time? We just don't know. But then after Griffith and the princess get together, we obviously get a very interesting part of the story. And that is the king finding out and being a little bit mad about it, getting a little bit angry about it, right? And he captures Griffith, and that is, I'm guessing, a big part of the story is capturing Griffith. I think it leads to the eclipse. I don't know. I could be completely wrong there. I still don't even know exactly what the eclipse is. I just know it's whenever all the demon stuff starts. At least I think it is. I don't know. Don't ask me. And it is very, very interesting. He captures him. He tortures him. And Griffith here, I wrote specifically, G-Man accused King of incest, said he was worthless. That was interesting because, again, it's what is Griffith playing up and what are his actual emotions. And to accuse the king of that, it definitely, after he said it, a lot of it made sense, right? Especially seeing the king, later, right? Definitely made a lot of sense. And after that, we get the volume, you know what we get if you know where we're at. So here I can read my 4 notes of the entire thing, and that is all that I will say on it. Please don't. Please. Why? Okay, he didn't go all the way, and that's all I'll say about it. That's all that I will say about that. Next, we see that the Hawks are massacred. Right. The Hawks being massacred, it was a point that was going to happen, especially after what Griffith did. And knowing later that Casca takes command, it's very good. And then we get the cut to Nuts. I wrote Nuts fights in the tournament. Cool fight. His first fight against the guy, it was cool. It was solid. The art, the choreography of the fight was all really cool. And it's kind of cool to see, we know that Guts is strong, but to again kind of see, okay, how far has he come? It's very cool. And then I wrote in there, time skip? What the time skip? And yeah, so apparently there's been a time skip and I wrote next to it, it's been a year. And I think that's a solid time skip. It was interesting. He said a couple years ago, the merchant said a couple years ago, Band of the Hawk did some stuff. So I was like, this has been like years? Like years is a bit excessive, but a year. That's completely fair and fine time skip. And, it's cool. and then we get to my second page of notes. So we come back, and the Hawks are fugitives. And it's very interesting to see this band that was going to be one of the highest bands in Midgard, right? Midgard? To see them become like this and to see them be whittled down. It's good to see that all of our main characters are still around. You know, Berserk hasn't gone too grimdark. Yeah, I know about the horse. But it's good to see that Berserk hasn't gone too grimdark yet. We see that Casca is the leader. And, you know, it's very nice to see as she was essentially kind of the third in command. You know, I mean, you think of the hierarchy of the Hawks, and you think Griffith, Guts, Casca. But that's also just the lens we're provided for the story. But to see her become the leader is just kind of natural. And then they get ambushed. Whoa. And they're ambushed by the same guy, and we learned that from the tournament, that it was the dude trying to, put together a fort to take down the Hawks. So it's not surprising to see him here at all, but then Nuts himself. Here I wrote, Nuts is back. Cool fight, Nuts is back. I wrote Nuts is back twice. It was so cool to see Nuts come back and to reunite with, obviously it hasn't been a long time. It's just been about half a volume at this point, if I remember my pacing correctly. But still, to know that it's been a year and to kind of get a feel for what the Hawks have been through, it's so good to see them finally reunite with Nuts. And, from the beginning to see Nuts kind of be like, oh, is this the right choice? Like, why did I really even set out? And for him to come back and be like, I didn't really find an answer. He's like, I just went and I swung my sword. It's very good to have Nuts back with the Hawks. And I really enjoyed it. Like I said, Nuts is back. Cool fight. Nuts is back. What else do I really need to say about that? The fight was cool. Choreography, art is amazing as always. I say that for every single fight because it's true for every single fight. And here I wrote specifically, Hawks aren't in a good place, but it's home. And that is true. Cause I think that was either said specifically or like almost specifically in the story. And it's good to see everyone. It's good to see it hasn't been a long time, right? It's good to see Guts reunite with everyone, and especially after it's been so long in universe, and to kind of, like I said, to know what happened to them, and for Guts to finally feel like I'm home, right? And then I just wrote, this is good. It was just a really good part of the story to see all of them reunite. I love Berserk, and this is just a great part. And then we get to the final part, Casca versus Nuts. They fight for a bit, and Casca stabs him and gets all emotional, and then Casca talks about how she loved Griffith, or G-Man. Casca loved G-Man. But it's all very kind of sad. It's a very interesting part, and I wish I had recorded this sooner too. When I read this at night, I finished and then went to bed, so I can't remember exactly what was said. But man, it's all very emotional. Getting to hear from Casca and finally, unwrapping the final couple layers there. And then Casca tries to kill herself. Not very based. L move, honestly, Casca. And then, Nuts saves her. And then, ooh, they're in love. Gotta love love. And then, what? I have wanted to say this forever and have it be genuine, right? I felt the however many page sex scene between Guts and Casca was a brave choice, but a bit gratuitous. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got to actually use that line in the thing. No, I thought it was all good. I mean, to say, like, was it a bit odd? Yes, but I think that's just because it's not something that people are used to consuming in a medium like Berserk. And so to see it presented like that, I don't think it was presented gratuitously. I think it was presented in a way that's realistic to the characters and shows a lot of stuff there. And Berserk has never shied away from that, and I can definitely appreciate it because there's a stigma around it, I feel, especially in more modern works of art. And I really enjoyed Berserk. Getting to it and really representing that, because too often it is depicted as something innately erotic, like whenever you're supposed to be reading, and I guess you could say that it is, but Berserk definitely didn't present it like that. It didn't feel like a sex scene so much as it felt like the culmination of Guts and Casca's relationship. That's a very fine line to walk, and I think he walked it very, very well. And in my notes I just wrote sex, but I thought it was handled very well, and I was very, to say happy, I was very it was handled very well. It was handled very well, and I really appreciated that. But then we get into Guts' trauma with Gambino and his first sexual experience, which haunts him. He has some serious trauma from it, and he almost chokes Casca and stuff, and then he unloads. He's essentially talking to Gambino through Casca. And Gambino isn't a character that I personally have touched on much in my reviews because he hasn't come up yet. That's earlier in the story. But Guts has some daddy issues, and it's cool to see that trauma. I can appreciate how real the story is, and that's another reason why I appreciate how the sex scene with Guts and Casca is handled and presented. Is that it's presented in a very real way, from Guts' perspective, who has that trauma. And to see him, quote unquote, work through with Casca, but to see him lay it bare to Casca and for her to accept him nonetheless. For him to be like, yeah, I killed my father. And I can't remember, it's been so long since I've read Golden Age. And to see, like, Is this the first time Guts directly referred to Gambino as his father? I don't know, but that was very obviously the relationship that they had. It was very obviously how Guts looked up to him as. I can't remember, but it is cool to see Guts refer to him as father, or his father, and it was handled very well, I feel. His whole scene with him unloading on the Casca and all that, and her accepting him nonetheless. And then they can finally get to the more intimate side, and we don't get to see that. And I to say, is that a choice? I don't know. It could just be that we already saw it once, he didn't want to draw it again. I like to believe it's a choice, because I definitely think that's like, okay, this is a more private moment, so we don't really need to see this, right? I enjoyed Casca being like, I feel like we're even now, and really just the two of them. I feel like the relationship is going to develop a lot from here, and I can't wait to see absolutely nothing get in the way of it. I can't wait to see them live happily ever after. All right, I'm gonna end the review right there. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, maybe subscribe. Oh no, if you're watching to the end of the video and you're not me or someone I told to watch the end of the video, maybe you'll like something. So maybe you could hit subscribe and we can get that number up to 4. Yeah. Anyways. I will see you all next time on The Rat's Nest. I can go ahead and tell you the next video will be Arrivederci Volume 11, which I'm currently reading through, and it is phenomenal. And I will see you then. Bye-bye.